On today's edition of Elevate My Podcast, we have a great guest to talk about cybersecurity. But what he told me about restaurants blew me away, and it's something that everybody should know. Well, thanks for joining us today. Another edition of Elevate My Podcast. We've got a very hot topic to talk about today, and that is cybersecurity. I think whenever I do my Credit 101 class, this always becomes a very hot topic of things that we talk about. And today we've got a great guest. We have John Martinez. He is the CEO of Core Recon. John, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, great, great. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Okay, a little bit about myself. I was in the Marine Corps for about 10 years. My last 4 years, I learned about the cybersecurity realm, what hackers do, penetration testing. I was taught all the good stuff. And then once I got out, I started my company in 2015, and it's called Core Recon. And we just started developing and started bringing awareness about cybersecurity to industries and counties and entities, state entities, of the importance of it. Within 6 months of the company, we were able to get in with AT&T, and we have the state contract for Texas DIR, which is Department of Information Resources. So any entities that get hit, they call Texas DIR, and we're on the spot to remediate the
Nice.
issue.
Well, thank you for your service, Semper Fi.
Thank you.
That's awesome. No, that's a great story. I think when I get into whenever I teach my Credit 101 for real estate class, and I get into the topic of identity theft, one thing I always bring up is that this is definitely an important topic to cover. However, when it comes to credit, which is what I do, a lot of the things in identity theft don't normally rise to the level of credit, but they are certainly things that can be financial related, but won't necessarily show up on your credit report. So there could be things that are going on with your identity, even if you look at your credit report, like, oh, my credit report's fine. I don't have anything on there. Everything that's on there is mine. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't vulnerable with your identity. So I'm really glad to have you on today. So one of the things that I talk about is like mail theft, dumpster diving, people getting your information. And it sounds so funny when you talk about dumpster diving, people literally digging through trash. And the answer I give, I'm sure you'll give a much better answer on that, is just, people want to get your personal information that they can use it against you. But maybe you can get more detailed on that as far as why should people be concerned about their trash being stolen and their information being stolen?
Well, I'll give you a good example. As a ethical hacker, we come into businesses, and this is, everything's contracted, so we don't do it on the whim, but we do what's called social engineering. And part of the social engineering platform that we do for businesses, we do dumpster diving. And I'll tell you the reason why we do that. One of the reasons why is there's information that people throw all the time, right? Whether it's we still name and address, social security number, credit card information, bank account numbers, pins, telephone numbers, employment data is a real big one, and then pre-approved credit card offers, right? That's one of the big things that a lot of the dumpster diver and hackers look for, is the fact that not only they know that you're pre-approved, now they can start saying you moved addresses. And it's so easy to misinform the postal service as saying, I want my mail to go here, and it's so easy. And you would think, well, the postal service is a government entity, you'd think they would notify you, but they don't, because they think it's you. And a lot of the times we see this, we see it in personal. I mean, if you look at, back in 2021, there was 33,000, I believe was the last thing I read, incidents involving mail carriers, robberies, mail theft, and it went up, from 2019, that was 24,000. And the reason why it's gone up is we've gone into a digital age.
Yeah.
And in this information, I can grab this information and start forming my own credit card, using your information that I grabbed that you threw away or that I
Wow.
stole from your mailbox. And it's so easy. I can change IP addresses. You can't trace me. I can change, addresses within a second. So it's kind of like that roller dial, right? When
Yeah.
you get all those spam calls and you're wondering how are they getting all these phone numbers? They have a whole bunch of numbers that they roll, and it's the same thing how hackers do it. And when you don't throw things away, and a lot of people, they see junk mail and they just throw it. I always
Hmm.
recommend. I tell all my clients, I tell people I know, I said, get a shredder, get a small
Yeah.
shredder right next to where you get your mail and put it on
Shred
top of
everything.
that table. Shred everything.
Yeah.
I don't leave anything. And if you don't have a shredder, tear out the information that has your name on it, shred it into pieces, and I would throw it in two different dumpsters.
Yeah.
One cycle and one the other one. That way you break up something. Because let me tell you something about dumpster diving. I've seen shredded documents before, and we took the time. It took me almost 2 weeks, but I was able to piece it together and put
Wow.
it together and grab that information, and it's doable. And people think, oh well, I have a shredder, just shred. If you're shredding 1 inch diameters, I'm able to put that together because you put it all
Wow.
in the same dumpster.
Wow. Yeah, it's a major. So even like a crosscut shredder, would you say that you could still even put stuff back together with a crosscut shredder?
Yes, you,
Wow.
you still can. Now, if you have the patience, and a lot of hackers, they do, they have the patience to do it. And it's unbelievable, but there's videos out there. You can see people putting this together.
That's scary. That's scary.
It's scary, but I always tell people you got to remember it's not just the movies, right? You see
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
in movies and you think to yourself, oh, that's just the movies. Well, it's not. They
Yeah.
got it from somewhere because it's reality.
Well, and I always talk about the show Mr. Robot. I think that's it's a great show that kind of talks
Great
about
show.
black hat versus white hat type, hackers and one thing I always tell it's kind of a joke is, I remember when, all of your information was, readily available in the phone book. But now it's like they're going out and digging through your trash to get it and to get other things like you're saying, like credit card offers, so they can kind of open that up. That is definitely some scary stuff. So shoulder surfing, is when kind of people are looking over your shoulder. What kind of things do you think people will be vulnerable for that kind of
Well,
thing?
shoulder surfing happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Airports mainly. Please, don't, whatever you do, don't go to ATM in an airport.
Oh
If
yeah.
you go to ATM, I don't know how many times I've seen this. Airports, shoulder surfing's really, really big. They can still send different information such as passwords, credit cards, personal information, pins, your account. I don't know how many times I've overlooked just to kind of look at a flight and I see someone logging into their bank account on their phone and I see their PIN,
Wow.
because they're not hiding it. It's 0227. I'm like,
I
and
got
I'm
it.
thinking this happened in front of me. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything, but that doesn't mean someone else sitting next to me, won't use that information.
That's
Um,
that's crazy.
always look what's behind you. If you're getting money out, I don't care if they have that little plastic thing that covers your pin. I
Yeah.
always put my hand over that as well. And your pin, you can feel the pin, you can feel the numbers, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
The same sequence buttons, 1, 2, 3, and it just goes down the list. I always tell people, look behind you, even when you're walking, giving your credit card information out. I never like to give it out, verbally. There's always people watching, and like I said, shoulder surfing is everything. From
Yeah.
going to the grocery store
Yep.
to going to the convenience store. Oh, I'm just going to go pick up a drink, and just be careful. It
Yeah.
happens all the time, and you become a victim.
Yeah, yeah, very easily. And skimmers is another one that we talk about. And I know like my wife, my sister, and many people when I talk about this, all say that they've been a victim of, putting their credit card in a gas pump, and then now all of a sudden um they find a bunch of charges on their credit card because they went to, kind of a shady, place to fill up their gas.
Yes.
Um
So
is Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was going to say, it's very popular. I don't know how many calls we get a day about that.
Oh, really?
Gas stations, from gas stations to pause systems, at a convenience store. And you're right, it's mainly it, and you'd be surprised. It's even some of the main convenience store chains that have these devices, and it's very simple. These little skimming devices. They're very simple to install. They're very simple to just, oh, I'm going to put gas, and it takes them less than 2 seconds to install this machine. And even in the gas pump, and you're sliding your card in, and what you're doing is putting your card information on a chip, and
Mm-hmm.
they're able to retrieve this device later and download all the information you just gave. And here's another thing about skimming, and a lot of people think it's pause systems, it's this, oh, well, I don't use that, I use cash, or I do this. Restaurants are a big thing. We're seeing restaurants right now increase in how many victims are getting exposed. And I'll give you an example. Restaurants are the main turnovers in employment.
Mm-hmm.
They're a high turnover. So you get hackers that become waiters for a day, and they have these skimming devices that fit in the palm of your hand. And I'm talking about something that fits right here. And all it takes is somebody to put it on their ankle. They pretend they dropped the card, your credit card at the table, and they'll bend over, pick it up, and they'll slide it right on the skimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Now they just got all your information. And I tell people this all the time. And next time when you go out, anybody, I challenge you, go out on a Friday night, you're with your friends, you're with family, and now it's time to pay the bill. How many times and how many of you have given the card to a complete stranger that you
Mm-hmm.
just met, and he takes off with it and says, I'll be back with your check,
Like
or I'll be
every
back with
time.
your receipt.
Yeah.
Next time, I challenge you, look at where that person goes. 9 times out of 10, he doesn't go straight to that, pause system. He'll go to the back, he'll pick up another load. Well, what is he doing with my card?
Yeah.
We don't ask that. We assume everything's safe, and it's not. These are skimmers that work for a waiter or waitress for one day, and then they leave and they grab credit card information. So I always
Wow.
tell people this: look, if you're going to go to a restaurant, like myself, I either use I take out cash for the weekend, or I use a special card that I can load money on. And I know
Oh,
that if it does get skimmed,
like a Cash App or something like that.
right. And I know
Yeah.
if it does get skimmed, they're only taking $200 away from me,
Yeah.
not my credit card information and not my personal bank information. I think debit cards are the worst nightmare that ever came out.
Yeah.
And I don't use it. I tell my kids not to ever use it. My kids don't even own a debit card. They have one, they don't utilize it. I don't utilize it. I never have. And I never will. I think it's the worst thing ever developed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, kind of along those lines, when you talk about skimmers, they have now the RFID cards, and I always recommend, putting your RFID card in those little sleeves.
Yeah.
How well do those sleeves work, and how much is that a threat as well?
The sleeves do work. When you read any, where it comes a wallet or a woman's purse or wallet that comes with that, those do work. But foil works just the same.
Oh,
So I put a strip of foil in my wallet, and it doesn't, do it. We have a little device called Flipper Zero that a lot of hackers use to grab information, RFDI, wireless, and I've tested it out. My the security engineers have tested this out, and foil works just as great. It
wow.
transfers the information. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll do another podcast with you and we'll talk about EMPs. Anyways, so the next one is breaches, and this is probably the big one. And I'm sure that this is, if you're working with the state of Texas, breaches is probably what you're talking about. So there was I think one of the more famous ones was the breach that happened in at that pipeline in the southeast where they had to pay like $5 million in Bitcoin. I know recently I read an article about a municipality that was hacked, and they cranked up like the fluorine or some chemical that gets put in water. They
Yes.
cranked it up to where it would be poisonous, but they caught it before it got into the actual public stream. So those kind of things are scary. We'll talk about that in regards to breaches.
Well, breaches happen all the time. And, I always, we get calls like right now, I do have a team of engineers up in Dallas right now working on a breach that occurred Saturday.
Wow.
And a lot of it, pertains to once we investigate, these are simple things that could have been fixed, before the breach. But when breaches do occur, a lot of people think the data is removed. Sometimes, 9 times out of 10, the data is not removed, it's just encrypted. And
Hmm.
from the encryption process, you would need to pay for the Bitcoin, pay by Bitcoin to get the encryption to unencrypt it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The program. But the problem we get is, you're trying to trust a hacker to say, give me the software to unencrypt it, and we've seen some where they paid the money and they didn't get the key.
Oh, wow.
So hackers are not trustworthy, but it's become
Yeah.
a growing business that, with these breaches, it encrypts their data. There's ransomware that gets thrown into their system and locks down their entire system. So you got companies losing money, you got companies that cannot work, you got employees that are sitting there doing, nothing at all until this gets fixed. And 9 times out of 10, it's through, a phishing email, or it's
Yeah.
through they found, best practices, right, of cybersecurity. I had this one person, we got breached and it came from a USB drive. And when we
Hmm.
interviewed him and questioned him, he said, well, I found the USB drive in the parking lot. And
Wow.
he says, but it was wrapped. And I said, yes, they're getting very smart. So what these hackers are doing is they'll get a razor blade and cut the little plastic off, load their Trojan horse virus or any virus that's on there, put it back into the package. And with super glue, if you press it hard enough, it looks like it's never been opened.
Wow.
And what they do is they even put it into like Best Buy little bags, and then they'll throw it in the parking lot. So when a user walks by, somebody who doesn't know about this kind of stuff says, "Oh, look, somebody dropped it," right? So they
Yeah.
pick it up and they realize it's never been opened. They open it up, and now they just infected their systems.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's crazy. And I always tell people, the security that goes into some of these places as far as like, but it can be easily hacked by just an employee that makes a mistake, or,
exactly.
things like that, like bringing in a USB, for sure. So, you mentioned phishing, and I always tell people, because I get phished all the time. I think there's one that I'm getting nonstop right now is, you need to change your Microsoft 365 password. Click here. And when you hover over the link, I'm like, that doesn't take me to Microsoft 365, right?
Right.
Um, and so, what I always do when I get those phishing emails is instead of clicking on the link, I'll go to my actual software and I'll just go ahead and change the password, right? Where I would normally go, I would not click on the link.
Right.
So someone's saying like, oh, click here to change your Amazon password. I'm not clicking on the link. I'm just going to go to Amazon where I normally go and then change my password to be safe.
Correct.
Because phishing emails, yeah, and a lot of times I think they lead to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is pretexting.
Yes, I was just
Um,
going to say that.
yeah. So talk a little bit about that. I got some stories that I on pretexting, but I'm interested to see to hear what you have to say.
So those who don't know what pretexting is when they put a fabricated story at the other end of the text to gain your trust, and then from
Hmm.
there they trick you, manipulate you to either download something or provide information, share information, or send money. Um, and that's what pretexting is. And I don't know how many times we get a call that says, Amazon just told me I need to reset my password. One, Amazon's never going to text you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let's just put that out there. Amazon will never tell you, hey, it's time to change your password. They don't do that. Same thing with Netflix. Netflix, they don't have a team that sends a text message to every single user to say change your password. That's just not what it happens. And I don't know how many times we can laugh about this, I don't know how many times people fall victim to this because they don't understand, they don't know. And knowing cybersecurity is about knowledge, and if you don't know the basics of it, you're going to get caught, and it's not going to be in a good way. And I always instruct people. I said, just learn the basics of what to do, what not to do, what's the best practices of it. Pretexting is one of them. We get calls all the time about this. And one thing I always tell people to do: block the number. Do not reply back. Some
Yeah.
people reply back, and I said that's the worst thing you can do. And I'll tell you why. Some of these hackers that do pretexting, they send out in a bulk of phone numbers, right?
Hmm.
They don't know what phone numbers are active. They don't know which ones are deactivated. They don't know which ones are anything. They just send it in bulk. The moment you reply is the moment they know your phone is active and you're a user. And now they're going to grab your phone number and start grabbing and selling it to the dark web,
Wow.
because they're going to say this is an active number and I can sell this for $1. And
Wow.
they and there's forums out there that have your phone number in there.
That's crazy. You always tell people, 90% of the web is the dark web, but I've never been to the dark web. Have you been to the dark web?
I have been a dark web, and a lot of my engineers, hacker engineers, have gone to the dark web. And just the other day, we were gathering information from a company that had gotten ransomware, and they released some of their information on the dark web, and
Yeah.
we were able to trace that. But I've been there. It's not a pretty place.
Yeah.
But it is a place to find out if certain things that are going on and what's
Yeah.
going to happen in the world, right? What they're
Yeah.
attacking next. And some of these hackers, when their egos, they indicate what's going to happen next week, and we're able to notify the proper authorities on those.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. So is it safe to call you a white hat hacker?
Yes, we are ethical hackers now. We
Ethical
don't do
hackers.
anything black hat at all anymore. We used to a long time ago. A lot of my engineers did. We converted into a white hat, so now we stop a lot of the attacks that are coming in,
That's good.
and we know how a hacker thinks. And that's one of our advantages of people that trust us, companies that trust us and been with us for years, is the fact that they have never been hit after they provide our services, or they receive our services, because we know exactly what to look for, what vulnerabilities.
Wow. No, that's awesome. And the last one that I wanted to touch with, because since I'm talking to so many realtors, and a lot of times when I give my class, I'm at title offices, and some of the stories that have come from title offices in regards to wire fraud is amazing to me. Um, so, and I always go through, some of the stories that happen with wire fraud and how money gets stolen, but how are people getting the information? That's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. So, um, how does a hacker know that this person is closing on a home or they're about to do a transaction? And let me just tell you this story, and then you can opine on it. Is from one of the title companies that there was a couple or a gentleman that was coming in. He had a closing that day, and he was bringing in a cashier's check. And then he got an email that looked like it was from the title rep that said, we've changed our procedures. We don't want you to bring a cashier's check. Go ahead and bring that back to the bank, and then instead wire the money here. So he did that. He went back to the bank, but did the cash, got the money back for the cashier's check, and then wired the money to the link. And then he said, afterwards, he emailed back and said, please respond and make sure you got the money. And of course, he didn't get a response. And then after an hour, he was like, what's going on? And then he started making phone calls, started calling the title rep. Well, she was in another meeting. She didn't get the call. And then he stormed up there to the title company. And she was just got out of her meeting, and he's of course hot. He's like, where's my money? Where's my money? She's like, what are you talking about? Our closing's not for another hour, and you're supposed to bring a cashier's check. She said, no, you sent me an email to say to turn the cashier's check in and instead wire the money. And I want to know where my money is. So, they got the FBI involved and all this kind of stuff. And I think he got a little bit of the money back, but, and I hear a lot of these stories. So how does that hacker know what's going on and to get that detailed?
So this is where I come in and tell companies they need to have a forensics on their O365 email and their email system. What we have been seeing lately in the past year and a half is hackers that are able to breach into the administrative side of their email system, whether it's Exchange, whether it's O365, whether it's Gmail, business, and they're able to monitor how you talk to everybody. They're able to see who you're communicating with, and they don't do anything. So the first 6 months, they're just in there looking, how do you talk to this person? You know, if you call, let's just say this guy's named George, but you, Jim, calls George Bubba because y'all been friends since y'all were kids.
Oh, wow.
They get to start relating that. Oh, well, Jim calls him Bubba. So now what we're going to start doing is now we know the way they talk. And then they'll start coming up with an email system saying, hey, Bubba, it's George. Can you forward me that credit card information? So now they're able to see. And then now this guy, Jim's going, well, it's got to be him because he's calling me Bubba, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is, I don't know how many times we have gone into their O365 or email system and seen someone forwarding emails to a fictitious Gmail account or to a Yahoo account, and they're able to see all your emails and transactions. So if me not knowing the system, I'm going to tell you right now, they need someone going into that title company and actually monitoring their O365, and I can guarantee you, I'll put money on it. Somebody's in there monitoring those email accounts, and they're
Wow.
tinkering in there, and they're probably still in there.
Wow. Yeah. And just for those people that don't know, O365, I'm assuming is Office 365, the
Yes,
Microsoft.
it's Microsoft
Yeah.
Office. Yes,
Yeah.
where
Which
you
is
get
different than Microsoft Exchange. So Microsoft Office 365 is almost like a cloud feature that integrates with Outlook. Am I correct?
that is correct.
Yeah. So versus Microsoft Exchange, which is just an Exchange server that Microsoft hosts that integrates with your Outlook. So just so people understand when you say O365, that's what it is. But I
Yeah.
think because it is a cloud product, could make it even more vulnerable. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, majority of these things that we see, hackers impersonations within the systems are all 365 and cloud versions.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. Well, I'm not going to give the name of the title company or anything, but I'll talk to them about it.
Yeah,
Maybe
you
have
might
them
want to
give you a
talk to
call.
them, and whether it's me or somebody else, they need to get somebody to go in and do what's called an O365 email forensics.
Mm,
And let them have a report that shows exactly, and you'll be surprised. I guarantee you that report's going to show a lot of mail forwarding somewhere
yeah.
that they're not even going to know where that email is.
And it's probably like a lot of mortgage companies I deal with. I'll get an email and it will be like a Citrix server or something that I'll have to go and in order to read the email, I'll have to go and create an account within that Citrix server. And then I'll have access to the email and the stuff that and the content. Every time I get an email from them, I have to log in and do a separate layer on.
Yeah,
So I'm sure that that's for that added security that mortgage companies are doing.
and that's great. I would suggest everyone do that.
Yeah, yeah. And just a little bit about me. I had a little bit of background in telecom, so I know enough to be dangerous, but this is like going back 20 years now. But some of the same things that are done today, it's like the Citrix servers and things like that are still, there. Obviously they're more advanced than they were 20 years ago. But I remember having a key fob that had a little number on it, but now they have apps that do something very similar to where the Okta Verify apps, and I'm like, oh, this is just like the key fob that I used to carry around when I
Yeah.
worked at Quest. So yeah, so the one last thing is what's one thing that you could tell consumers out there that they should be most aware of that you haven't really covered yet so far?
I would say always be suspicious about things.
Okay.
I don't know how many times that we got a call that said, "Well, we thought it was AT&T or we thought it was a phone company." We had a situation where somebody called saying they were AT&T and they needed their confirmation and account number because they needed it updated. And it so
Yeah.
happened that the girl that answered the phone had just started working there, and it was a busy office. And she went to the office manager, and the office manager said, "Who's on the phone?" She says AT&T, and she went, grabbed all the information, gave all the information to this guy over the phone, and the next day their phone stopped ringing. He had full,
Wow.
he had full control of their phone system, and sent them an email and said, if you don't pay me by Bitcoin this much, then I'm not going to release your phone number. And AT&T couldn't
Wow.
do anything about it because AT&T was like, well, he had all the information.
So he went in there.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So what I'd like to leave, your listeners and everyone who's watching this is, please be vigilant. Please, if you have to second guess yourself and think, is this right? It's probably not. So always be cautious of where you're handing your credit card information to. Be cautious of what website you're going to input your information. One thing that I have done, and so have others, cybersecurity people, is we never match our license with our credit card. So, like with my credit card information, it is sent to my sister's house, you
Oh,
know, and I have four sisters. So it is sent somewhere to them, one of them, and all my other credit card information is there. So if you steal my wallet and think that my address is the same as my credit card, it's not, and it'll always
yeah.
fail. You know,
Interesting.
Try not to attach a lot of things to everything, and please change your passwords.
Okay.
I don't know how many times I've seen the same password used all across the board for social media, for their personal accounts,
Yeah.
and work accounts, and stop using work accounts to social media. So
Oh,
create. Google has this great thing. You can create a Google account, at the plus symbol, and put Facebook, and that'll create a Facebook account for that email.
okay.
So there's a lot of features out there, and like I said, it's about best practices.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of scary stuff. No, this is great. I mean, I say scary, but I think it's very informational because it's like being aware and you still have to when you're walking around the streets, look around your shoulder because there's scary stuff out there too.
Yes.
But I think what online is just as important, is when you're online, being vigilant, like you say, and especially have kids. Like I have two kids, and they're getting the age where we're having to teach them about a lot of things when it comes to being online. But like my daughter really wants to do a YouTube channel. I'm like, well, but I don't want your face out there. That's what she doesn't understand. So there's things like that kids don't quite understand, and they're very naive. So for parents too, I think being vigilant, especially with your kids' information and data, is important as well.
Yes.
So John, how can people find you?
Well, we are at corerecon.com, and that's CORERECON. You can also reach us by a phone call, 361-248-3258.
All
And we
right.
are 24/7. We are 24/7 post. If you have questions, anything like that, you can email us as well at info@corerecon.com. And we'll answer any information you have, or if you have questions. We're here to help. And I don't know how many times I like to help people, and people say, you charge for this. No, to me, I think this is the best thing I can give people, is the knowledge of how to protect themselves, and better protect themselves. Because I don't want to be called at 2 o'clock in the morning because, somebody did something, or somebody didn't
Yeah.
update.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier for me to provide that knowledge than it is, getting that call that's saying that something did happen.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time today, and I think the people out there listening to the podcast will definitely get a lot of good information from this, and something I'm definitely going to be bringing up. I learned a lot today, so I'm going to change a little bit of the things that I talk about when I do my Credit 101 class, which we got another Credit 101 class coming up next week in Austin area. So go to facebook.com/elevatemyscores. Look at the events page, and you'll see all the upcoming Credit 101 for real estate classes coming up there. So, well, thanks again, John, and I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. One thing too I forgot to add was
Yep.
always make sure to, always look at your credit score, right? Always look at your credit, what's going on, have protection for your credit card information, your social security. I know there's LifeLock. There's other avenues. I understand that the other systems use them as well for your credit reporting, to protect your credit. That's the main thing. I don't know how many times I get calls saying I have a house in Ohio, and they go, I've never been to Ohio.
Oh
so
yeah.
So
Yeah.
and you know that realm as well,
Yeah.
credit repair, but a lot of people don't do it. And we're in the day of age where everything's going to be digital. Our money sooner or later is going to be digital currency. And
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, you got to protect yourself now. Don't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
looking forward to the digital currency age. Yeah,
I'm
we
not
use
either.
yeah, we're using myscoreiq.com. So myscoreiq.com shows all the FICO scores, including like mortgage FICO, auto
Okay.
FICO. And it also offers the same benefits that LifeLock does. It notifies you when something's going on. I remember when I bought my truck, I was notified like within a half a second of him pushing the button to do an inquiry. It's like, oh,
Yes.
someone's checking your credit. So yeah, no, I always recommend that as well. So that's
Yeah.
great info.